Hi folks, you're with Tasteless today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to sort of expand beyond what Elon Musk has suggested to retired air traffic controllers, that due to the alleged shortage of controllers, but also the shortage of skilled controllers, that those that have retired early may want to consider coming back to work as full-time, or maybe I don't know, 2 or 3 days a week or something like that, but come back, bring your skills, those straight white males that were kicked out by affirmative action policies, DEI policies, all that sort of, race, gender, quota policies, all those people that were effectively evicted. I mean, let's call it what it is, effectively evicted from the workforce. Consider coming back to work, but bring your skills with you. We want your skills. Now, it doesn't matter whether you look, whether it's in air traffic controllers, where the cost of low skilled or unskilled controllers can result in disaster. It's much less noticeable and obvious in the business sector. So a business doesn't do as well, or isn't doing as well as it could, or this sort of thing. You can't really see that. It's not obvious in the same way that planes crashing in midair or something. That gives you a really quick sort of stark example of what the cost of unskilled workers is. But in other areas of the economy, or other areas of business, or areas of any activity, it's not as obvious, at least not to the outside observer. If you're up close, you might see it, but now I am up close, so I do see it. And there are businesses, companies and entities that I did business with, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. It was all straight white males, and they were all pretty good. It was, in the overall scheme of things, they were efficient, they were kick-ass, they were well organized, they were, you were meeting impressive people that knew what they were doing. Not every one of them, by the way, was impressive, but most of the time you'd be meeting impressive people that knew what they're doing. But today, you go to that same business, you'd be lucky to see a single straight white male. I mean, not one. And the majority of the people there are, by far and away, the majority are female, and the majority of those are brown and black, or brown in Australia anyway. There's not that many black people here. They're brown, and many of them don't speak English as a first language, and many of them speak English very poorly, but somehow they've replaced the competent, credentialed, higher achieving straight white males that are kicked out, to be replaced by a brown woman who doesn't speak English very well and has none of the credentials. I mean, why would you do that to any business? Now, what's happened in, if you like, concurrently to all this change in personnel, getting rid of the straight white males and putting in, brown women that don't speak English, again, quotas, diversity and affirmative action, all that sort of stuff, is that these businesses have changed structurally how they do business, how they interact with a customer, how they interact with a marketplace, how they interact with sort of each other. That's quite changed. So this business that used to do some government work, but effectively they worked, they got a lot of customers out in the marketplace. They competed. So they had to be pretty good to win that business. But it gradually morphed into, they became a virtual quango, you could say, where pretty much all of their business now comes from government or is mandated by government. So the government can go to one party and say, well, look, you have to have certain things and you have to get it from them. That's the requirement. Now, if you don't get it from them, you can't practice business in Australia. You have to get it from those guys. So their revenue is now guaranteed. So they're no longer a commercial, private sector competitive entity. They've now got guaranteed revenues and guaranteed by the government, in effect. And so this has drastically changed how they do. Now, I saw this when it first came off. They appointed an angry gender, radical feminist activist who'd worked for a radical feminist activist NGO. And they appointed her as CEO of this company, someone who had no commercial expertise or experience or credentials whatsoever. And she was put in there, and she just, or her job was to get rid of the straight white males. That was her job, and replace them with, again, brown people and illiterate peasants and lesbians and so on. So that I was in there recently. They needed us to do some work, and so I wandered in there, and the place is insane. The amount of people there that have no job, they have no purpose. They just wander around from meeting room to meeting room, pretending to be busy and pretending to be important, and so it's just crazy. The incompetence, the over promotion. I mean, you've got to listen carefully to people as they talk in their pidgin English, and what are they saying? I mean, you have to really listen carefully. Could you repeat that? And that's the state of the place now. It's a shell of what it was. And anyone who's competent and knows what they're doing has been thrown out. And there was this gay Asian guy who is born in Australia, and he was probably the most sensible person there, and he hasn't got a fucking clue what he's doing. So that level of degeneracy is happening, and just keep this in mind. It's happening at two levels. One is the companies are managing to carve out a niche for themselves where they avoid having to compete in the market. So the amount of the Australian economy that is now market-driven, competitive market economy-driven, is dwindling. It's almost disappearing. And again, this diversity and inclusion, affirmative action and quotas is very much part of that wider architecture, moving away from market competitive economies into what effectively is a centrally planned economy. As in the numbers of mass migrants being brought in is centrally planned. The climate change program is centrally planned. Everything is centrally fucking planned by the globalists these days. So the need for a market-driven economy just doesn't exist, or it's diminishing and declining quickly. Jobs are now allocated based on all sorts of quotas rather than competence. Now, this has had a huge effect on a whole lot of things, whether it be government services, air traffic controllers, business delivery, you name it. It's had an effect on all of it. You look at trying to get service in the retail stores, or trying to find anyone who knows what the fuck they're doing in a retail, even over simple things. The amount of times we get emails from the head office of a company saying this is the product promotion of the week, and you can get it for free or for this price or that price or whatever, and you go into the store and they stare blank. They got no idea what you're talking about. He said, well, don't you get memos? And so, yeah, I suppose I don't bother to look at them anymore. Right, okay. And then they want to know, you have to bring in a copy of their own documents so they know what's going on. It was crazy, but I was recently at a hardware chain, and this is quite a big store and so on. And the person who's the manager was a woman who was about as tall as she was as wide, and must have weighed close to 300 pounds. And she's an Islander woman, and who looked. I can't accurately describe the picture, but looked as about as grotesque as you can imagine. She was the fucking store manager. Again, part of a quota and affirmative action and all this sort of stuff. But she doesn't know squat. She doesn't know what day it is, for goodness sakes. And she's the store manager. So the degradation of standards and quality of work, again, whether it's air traffic controls or anything else, the degradation of standards is universal. Public services, business, everything. And everything is affected by this. And again, the architecture, straight white men have been kicked out. Now, I see this going around wherever we go and do business. If a straight white male does manage to get a job in any of these places and he's competent, capable, high achiever, as night follows day, I know the guy's going to get the sack. Not because he does a lousy job or he turns up drunk or he's grabbing the ass of the receptionist or something like that. Just because you don't fit in here. We're a low quality, we're a low IQ outfit. We're committed to ideological insanity here. You don't fit into that straight white male, high achieving, credentialed way. So we got to get the fuck rid of you. And so this idea of how many, and I know people who maybe they're only 60. I say that because I'm 62, so they're young, but they're not like they're still fit, active, and so on. It's not like they're 100 years old or something. But they're able to, they've effectively been evicted from the workforce, and they need those people with their skills, credentials, experience, capabilities. They need to be brought back into the workforce, I would argue. So I think it's a lot wider than just air traffic controllers, and hopefully the administration of President Trump can maybe take the lead in some of this, and put the word about amongst the other Western countries. You guys need to follow suit. You really do. And this will change. I mean, this is not just an issue of ageism, although I suppose it intersects with that. This is, those older straight white males. They come from the era of Nazis, of Hitler. That's the sort of stuff that is being radicalized into the youth. But the reality is that for an effective business, and to the business that does well and hires more people and has more people on higher salary jobs, economic growth. It's the whole 9 yards is effective when you get rid of your most capable people, which is what's happened all across the Western world. The capable straight white guy is being replaced with the black lesbian. And what do you think the consequences are going to be? They're not going to be good. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.